and welcome to Kidlit Live. This is the second episode. I'm just going to wait on here for a minute. It's 7:59, so we've got a minute to go. So I'll wait and see if anybody joins, and then we'll get started. So I'll just be chatting away for a moment. So I just hope you all, or for those that watched last week's, hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found it helpful and informative. And I hope that you was looking forward to tuning in again this week. And I hope you've all had a lovely week, and you're looking forward to a good weekend. I don't know how many of you who are watching who are going, but I'm going to the I Am in Print Writing Festival tomorrow, so I'm really looking forward to that. A nice early train at 6:30 in the morning, so woo! But yeah, can't wait. Looking forward to meeting up with loads of friends. Really looking forward to seeing Sarah and Elaine again. It's been so long. And all the workshops. I'm doing a workshop with Little Tiger, with Carl Newson, and there's just so many. So it's really exciting, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. So I'm going to bring on my first guest. So today, well, my only guest today. So I'm bringing on the lovely Chris Modafferi. So she is a writer and an editor. She's previously worked at Penguin, Bloomsbury and Scholastic on the children's books. And we've got some brilliant questions to ask her. There's some great questions come in. And if you have any questions that you would like to ask her now or while we're live, please do so on my YouTube channel, if that's at Arden Jones Author. Unfortunately, if you ask anything via Twitter, I won't get to see the question. So if you can ask via YouTube or even Facebook, that's Arden Jones Children's Author, that would be amazing. So I'm about to bring Chris on, and we'll get started.
Hello.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Super excited.
Good. So Chris is living in Italy now, so there's a little bit of a time difference for us. You stayed up for us. Woohoo! Thanks, Chris.
I mean, to be fair, it's only 9 p.m., but it's really dark outside compared to the UK. I was so shocked when I saw your background.
I know, it's really light. I love it like this. I hate it when the clocks go forward, and is it forward or back? It's back when it starts getting darker again. Yeah.
But you know
So
what?
when that happens, I'm like, oh, I want the sunlight. I need the light in the evening.
I love gloomy weather and like darkness, so this is good for me. But like normally during the winter, I just wish I was in the UK all the time.
So I've really been looking forward to these questions. So I've obviously, as I've sent them to you before, so you knew what to expect. I want to scare you on the night. But as I said earlier, Chris is happy to answer some questions if any come in while we are chatting. So just please send them again via my YouTube, which is at Arden Jones Author, or Facebook, Arden Jones Children's Author, and I will be able to see them on the streaming service that I'm using. So I'm going to get. Can you see? Oh, just check, because I didn't ask you earlier. Can you see the chat if anything comes in as well?
I can, yes, which is good.
That's good. I mean, I would ask them anyway, but
for me, I'm so impressed by like your tech skills.
I've never doing this streaming, so it's called Restream. It's just practically doing everything for me. So so I just it's going out anyway. I can see that. So I think if someone watches it on YouTube, I can see the numbers. But if someone watches it, is watching it because it's live on Twitter as well, I don't get to see how many are watching it. So it's it's weird. So it's like we feel like we're like just talking into like the oblivion, really.
Yes. It's probably for the best though, because I'll get quite nervous. I've not done any online events for a long time. I only said yes because it's you.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. Right. Okay. So I'm going to. Oh, you've disappeared. Let me just bring you back up there again.
No.
No. It just went because I was just bringing up the questions to ask you. So I'll go into what the questions that other people have asked after.
Okay.
So my first question to you is: did you always know that you wanted to work in publishing?
So when I read this question, I was a bit stumped by it because, okay, so I feel like I loved books, but I didn't really know where they came from as a kid.
Imagine.
Yeah, I mean, magically created. I actually remember seeing there was this one book which was about a horse. I can't remember what it was about, but basically it was written by a 16-year-old, and I was like, how did a
Oh,
16-year-old write this and print it and like do it all? And I just did not have the answers, and no one knew how to tell me the answers either. Because I mean, my family is very, I guess, yeah, it's not a career that anyone has ever aspired to. So yeah, I didn't know where books came from. I knew that I loved books. I knew that it was possible to write books. So I think I knew I wanted to write, but I didn't know that like working in publishing was a thing. And then when I found out, I was in my first year of uni when I found out. How bad is that? So yeah, and then as soon as I found out that that was something I could do, I was like, that's what I'm doing. But actually the writing came a bit later because I always thought like writing was not financially viable. In many ways it still feels like it's not. But
mhm.
I mean you get
Especially children's, I hear. Yeah, especially children's
yes, yes.
writing. Mm.
But I thought, okay, so I can't write because I just strike that out. So yeah, I thought, yeah, that's not gonna bring me in any money, and I can't. I'm not like who wrote that a woman needs to have money and a room, Virginia Woolf. I was like, I don't have a money and I don't really have a place. So I was like, okay, this will get me to work and have something to do with writing. But then I went freelance and I was like, I'm gonna give this a go. It's the one thing I've always wanted to do. But what about you? I don't know how like when because you're you've only recently started writing. Well, feels recently to me because I've only known you for like 3 years.
Wow, is it really? Yeah, yeah, we did meet. It was a few
I know.
years ago now, and it was just via a site. Oh, sorry, I'm not sure if
Right?
it's mine, but you keep
Wow, it
freezing. It's
was.
probably just where we're in other
Oh,
countries, maybe. I'm
maybe.
not sure.
I can see you.
But I'm not sure if it could just be that on my screen. If it looks all right at your end, then I'm sure it's probably fine. If anyone wants to comment and let us know. But yeah, no, I've always written, but I didn't think I could be an author. I didn't think it was something that was accessible to me. Um,
Yeah.
just because, and I think like similar to what you said, you didn't know how that happened. It was like when I was really young, I had no idea. The books were just there. They was everywhere. Like our school had loads, and like we always had books growing up. My older sister loved reading. I don't ever remember learning to read. I don't ever remember like my mum reading to me or anything like that. I remember my sister reading to me and me and my best friend reading to each other. So I've always like feel like I've always read, but I don't ever remember learning. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was so. But I've always just loved then writing, but just didn't realise like could be a career. I still don't know if it can be a career. I'm hoping it can be a career, but we'll see.
It will be. I mean, it already is. Your point about parents not reading. So my parents did read to me as a kid, but the funny thing is, like, because they're both Italian, they never grew up with American classics. I mean, I was born in the States. Um, so when I was a kid there, like they had all of these classics that they had no idea what they were. And so I didn't really grow up with like the classics everyone knows. So sometimes I'll be listening to someone talk about, I don't know, this really great nursery rhyme book, and I'm just like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But it's just because I guess I was a third culture kid, so I like had, yeah, I was just
Oh,
left
that's so
free.
interesting. So I thought they just would have been translated. Like now, they probably, they'd be sold and you would
The
have
Italian
access
ones,
to
you mean?
them. Oh, I
Maybe.
suppose no. Well, maybe yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah, you'd think if like there was like these huge children's books by Italian authors, why wouldn't we buy them and have them translated to? You'd think that
That's
would be a thing.
interesting though, because Italy buys a lot, but they don't really like sell that much in the outer
Oh,
world.
I
So a lot
wonder
of
why. That's
Italians
really
know all of these
interesting.
classics. Like Roald Dahl, like all of these like very well-known writers. I didn't really know Roald Dahl. I knew Matilda, but that was about it. Didn't know how big he was. And then I moved to the UK and I was just like, oh wow, I have to like learn all of these classics now because I have no idea what people are talking about.
Wow, that must have been like some intense reading going on.
It was so good. I loved it.
Oh, I can imagine. So we'll move on to like, because obviously we talked about how you wanted to work in publishing, but what was it about children's publishing that interested you? Like, did you think you could go into the adult side of things, or was it always just the children's side that interested you?
So interestingly, I did start out in adults. So when I was very, very lucky to get a scholarship to study at Oxford Brookes, and they have a really good master's program for publishing. So I went there and I basically like kind of was going with the flow because I had no idea what I was doing. As I said, I only discovered this was a career in my first year of uni. So when I went to do my master's, I was like, okay, let me see what the deal is about. But for me, to be honest, like to be completely honest, my only goal was to get a job that would pay me enough to survive on my own. Like that was it. I didn't care where. For me, anything would have done. So I started off with 2 internships, and one happened to be in adult nonfiction, and the other happened to be in children's. And so that kind of gave me an idea of what I liked and enjoyed more. And then I guess, yeah, I just like happened to, my first editorial job happened to be in children's. But I'm really glad it went that way. But I could have very easily ended up like it wasn't a passion-led decision in that moment. I think I really loved children's books, and I like that would have been my preference, just because I had a feel of like the differences between the 2 kind of guess trade categories, category codes, and and BISAC. But yeah, so for me it was just like purely mental and how do I put this? Like it was all dependent on money, basically.
Didn't put that in your CV on your application, though, obviously.
Just pay me. No, but to be fair, like I'm really glad with how things went, and I'm really, really lucky that I ended up working in illustrated children's books as my first editorial gig, because I hadn't realized how much I would enjoy that, and I'm a very visual person. So I think like sometimes when things are meant to happen, they just happen, because I could have never imagined this career being something like I didn't even know editors worked on illustrated books up until I ended up, I guess, working on them. Like it wasn't a conscious thing that was like, oh yeah, you can work on picture books. No.
That's so amazing. What just that job, just it sounds like a dream to me, just working with children's illustrated books
Yeah.
all day. And so, I mean, that kind of like brings me on to my next question, because you've worked on so many children's illustrated books and done so many books while you've worked at Penguin and Bloomsbury and Scholastic. But do you have like one or more that holds like a special place in your heart that you just like you're so glad that you worked on? And why? Like, is there a reason why? I didn't put why in our question, sorry. So don't feel like you have to answer. I'm putting you on the
So I
spot.
have 2. Now, the first one is probably London by Tube, which is the first book that I ever edited, ever, ever, ever. And I remember when I saw it in a bookshop window, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's the book that I worked on!" I took a picture with it and everything. But it was so nice because the first book I ever worked on was about London, which is probably, since I was a child, like the first place where I ever properly felt at home. So,
Oh,
like being able to work on a book about London and be introduced to London by that book, and then I eventually like used it to discover a lot of London. That was so nice. I loved that book so much, even though I had like a very small part in making it. And then the second one is probably "Do You Love Bugs" by Matt
oh,
Mickelson, which is a very, very fun nonfiction picture book.
and
And I think
amazing, amazing author as well.
he is
I've read
great.
quite a few,
He's
yeah.
so um, but yeah, I think like this was the first picture book where it was just so hands-on and I had so much creative control, and was able to work really, really closely with the author and illustrator, because he's an author and illustrator. And it was, yeah, it was just such a I remember like feeling so satisfied at the end of that project because it was a long one as well. And Matt was amazing in the whole process, and he's so nice to work with. And
Oh,
so that one
wow.
for me is such a highlight. And then I got to work on the second one too, and he's gone on and made like a bunch of others in the series. So it clearly has worked out well for him.
Oh, that
But
is so
actually,
good.
piggybacking to the question that you asked me before, I was wondering, when did you figure out that you wanted to work in children's? Because I don't think you ever told me.
No, well, I think no, I probably did. I mean, I've always written. I didn't realise like what I was really writing. I would just like do like just
Hmm.
randomly write like poetry and stuff. Um, but yeah, it was only from picking up um Holly Hughes and Sarah Massini's book, The Girl and the Dinosaur, that really made me think, oh, I'd love to be able to write something like this, but didn't think I could. So yeah, and it was only that when I realised that Holly is also like she's an Essex girl like me and has a working class background. I thought actually I can give that a try. So then I did, and but my first stories weren't great. I mean, I think you read some of them. It's like, oh, I'm not sure this one would work, but you did see potential in others. So woo, that was all good.
That is not true. I love all of your texts. But that's so interesting because I always wonder, because I feel when I like moved into writing and authoring, um, I kind of had a roadmap of what like I knew what that would look like for me, and I knew the steps that I needed to take, and I knew the whole process and all of that. And for me, like just how people that haven't worked in publishing before manage to do it and like know the steps to, because I didn't even know that you needed to literate. I wouldn't have known any of that stuff. So for me, the fact that you've managed to go out and get all of that info and just like find your feet in this like very, very confusing industry, that just amazes me. I don't know how you do it.
I thank Twitter for introducing me to Write Mentor for that,
Right.
and then leading me on to finding like other amazing organisations and friends.
Mm,
I think like Twitter is amazing, isn't it, for the writing community? Whether you're like a multiple published author, illustrator, or whether you're just starting out, everyone is so supportive of everyone. Like I've not met anyone that won't bother with you because you're like you don't even have an agent. Like everyone is just so
yeah,
nice.
that's so
And
true.
we're all just like trying to build each other up and just support each other, and I just think that's amazing with the I mean, I don't know what it's like with like for writing for adults, but definitely for children, from what I've experienced, it's just the best community. And because of
Mm,
that, it led me, like I said, to Write Mentor and just finding so many supportive friends, and then leading on to like workshops and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just amazing. It's just
yeah. Wow.
one of the best places. And obviously Twitter is where we met as well. We became friends, and
Yes, yes.
I've met some really good friends.
I do have to
So
say, like, you're so good at social media and self-promotion and even just, like, making friends in a very genuine way because we became friends and just, like, I don't even know how we did. It's so funny. But yeah,
I
it's
think I do remember. I think you put a post up about like you needed some
I needed
like
sewing
advice about
advice.
a sewing issue, and I was like, oh, I can. That's all right. I sew. I mean, there's obviously like there's
And
loads
then
of
I
fabrics
feel
still
like
behind me.
everyone needs to know this because I'm not sure people realize how generous you are, not only with your time, but just like with your thoughts. You're just so lovely. Because, yeah, I was trying to learn how to sew, and you sent me a bunch of material and books on how to sew and magazines. And like, you've just been so amazing with that. And yeah, I would
Oh,
have never, like, and I didn't even ask for that, but you were just so wonderful
that
and
makes me sound
generous.
weird now. just
No,
that's
no,
just
I
well, like,
appreciated
things
it
that
so much. It's so
I'd used a lot of it. I'd used all their magazines, and they was just sitting there. I mean, and when I knew that they could help you, I was like, well, I might as well give them to you. I mean, I was only going to take them. I mean, I would have took them to the charity shop anyway, or put them out and seen if anybody else wanted them. But because I knew, like, we just then just said like hi and stuff, and just seemed to like have a good like way with each other. I was like, well, I'm just going to send them to you, and if they help you, then they do. I mean, we've not chatted sewing, I don't think, ever since.
I know. It's because I got really
all been
overwhelmed with the
right.
directions of like the sewing machine. But anyway, we'll talk about that separately, probably.
Yeah, no one's tuning in to listen about sewing. So I'll get back to a question which I think will interest a lot of writers out there. So from an editor's point of view, what is on editors' manuscript wish lists right now, in your opinion? Is there a gap in the market?
This is really tough because I don't work in-house anymore, so I'm not entirely sure what is working, what isn't working. But I think at the end of the day, like, even publishers don't know what will necessarily work. It's all a gambling game, isn't it? So I guess as long as it's a very compelling text, even if it's one of a kind, like lessons in chemistry. I think I saw a tweet the other day about how it breaks all of the rules that writing classes tell you not to break. And that goes to show, like, if it's a really good story, it will work regardless. I mean, not that if it doesn't work, it's not a good story, but you know what I mean, that anything can basically work. But yeah, I think we were talking about this earlier, about how graphic novels seem to be very much in demand, and I think that's just a direct effect of Heartstopper, Paper Girls, and then I think I'm not sure if people are actively searching for YA, but since it's so huge on Book Talk, and I feel like I've seen a lot of YA deals coming up, so I guess authors are actively searching for that.
Yeah, I've heard that contemporary isn't a huge market right now. It's like a lot of it is still fantasy, is what people are writing and wanting. So, but thinking about the graphic novel side, just a question that's popped into my head, and I think it might help others, is like, you don't have to be, I know we know this with picture books anyway, but you don't have to be like illustrating your own graphic novels. If you can write them, then the publishing house would know of an illustrator that would work with the graphic novels as well, wouldn't they? The same way they do with picture books.
Yes, exactly. And actually, when I had a brief stint working at an art agency, and editors were actively asking for artists that knew how to do graphic novels. But basically, yeah, writing graphic novels, I'm sure there's like loads of resources online for this, and like as long as you Google it, you'll probably find way better stuff than what I'm gonna say. But I do know it very much looks like a script, like a film script. So you're kind of describing the panel, like what you basically, I mean, I've only worked on 1 or 2 graphic novels so far, because for such a long time they weren't a thing. And yeah, and basically, like, you have panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, for example, or panel 4, depending on how many like little boxes you have on the page.
So a box is a panel, is that right?
Exactly. Okay. Yes. And then you kind of describe what's going on that panel for the illustrator to know like what they're going to be illustrating. So very much like an illustration brief. And then you just have the dialogue on there, or like text. So you kind of think of it as a movie, I guess, in many ways. But yeah, and it's as simple as that. I mean, this could work, she says, not having written as
well.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, that's interesting.
It could work across like the whole of children's, because obviously, like, Heartstopper's like YA, isn't it? Is it young adult, or it's like mid sort of age, isn't it? I suppose. But you could put, like, I think like with middle grade, it would work as well.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, there's a whole market. I work 2 days a week for Topsta, which is like a book review website specifically for children's books. So it's like a very safe space for children to review their own books, and they do giveaways as well. But yeah, like, graphic novels are huge, and they get so much traction from the kids, and there's a whole market for 7+ or 6+ rather. So it's that sweet spot between, picture books and middle grade, but I think that's just going to extend into middle grade and YA too over time. Many.
It'd be so good to see, because we don't see that really. You're going to Waterstones, for example, and there's not that there, but that would be so nice to see something different sort of staring you in the face, rather than just the usual. I mean,
Yeah.
I love if I can look at books all day and whatever, but it's so nice to just have something just different, like a new thing coming in. That would be really exciting to see.
I definitely remember reading Captain Underpants all the time when I was a kid. I just loved it. It was so hilarious.
Oh yeah, because like the
But
Tom Gates books are like are that style as well, aren't
yeah.
they?
Yeah, exactly. So and there's, like, more and more coming out because I'm seeing them through, the various, like, giveaways that we do with Topsta and all the reviews that are coming in, and they always seem to be for graphic novels, and kids love them because 'cause they're so funny as well, and it's
Yeah.
just easy to read, very visual, like, sometimes a reluctant reader is just a more visual reader.
Yeah, well,
So
my eldest definitely, she doesn't like really read, but she just zoomed through the Heartstopper series like within she'd read one in a whole day and she
oh,
knew what it was about as well. It wasn't like she just skimmed it, she like actually
yeah.
read it. So and it's like if you're reading and you're enjoying reading, it doesn't matter what you're reading, you're getting pleasure from it. Like whether you're
Yeah.
older and you're reading a younger book or whatever, it's just we don't have to read for our age all the time. And I think that's quite, important. If you're, like my age, like 40 something, and I can still read like a middle grade book if I want to, like and enjoy it. So that's yeah, books are for everybody. Um
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much only read now at this moment in time. I only read like middle grade and YA. That's probably
Is
bad,
do you
but
think is
yeah.
that because you're currently writing middle grade stories? So that's taken, and then we can on to the next question. So
Oh.
you're writing books yourself, so you're currently writing a middle grade story. So do you want to tell us a
I
little bit about that? If you want to share?
I probably won't share the actual, like, plot line or pitch because I still don't know exactly where it's going. I don't wanna promise anything. I mean, you obviously know a bit more about it because you're one of my critique partners. But it's basically magic, it's witchy. It is, uh, it is a story of longing and w truly missing people in your life. This is such a bad description.
No, I'm definitely not. I think that was just quite that's showing that that's quite emotional. I think there, and I think that's really
It
important.
is emotional. It is emotional because at the core, it's a story of sisters, but it's also about a teenager who wants to break free and who, it's kind of yeah, I guess you could say that it's what happens to the people who are always the protagonists in stories that we hear of, like what happens to
That
them
sounds so
and how do they make
interesting.
their way in the world.
Oh,
At
I
least
love
that's
it.
what I'm
I love
trying to
it.
do.
Well, I think you kind of answered my next question, which is, are you a plotter or a pantser or a bit or a mixture like me? But you was like, I've no idea really what. I'm not going to share the plot, so I'm saying you're a bit of a pantser. That's my guess.
Okay. So in my defense, I do think it is good to be a plotter in many ways. So what I do like to have is a general idea of where my story is going. Like, I think I have the final scene in mind. I think I know where it ends, and I know that there are some key points that the story needs to hit. So basically, my goal throughout the book is kind of reaching that key point, and then okay, now I need to reach this next key point. And it's basically like all those events. So I really enjoy the 3-act structure that Victoria Everard, who is a YA writer, she actually taught me that in one of her videos. So basically, I love having an inciting incident where I know like something big has happened that unravels the story. Well, from which the story begins to unravel. And then I know that throughout the actual like second act, which is basically where the bulk of the story happens, I know that that's going to be where I need some midpoints to be. And yeah, and then basically I'm like aiming to have a good plot twist at the end, which is the third act. I mean, you know all of this stuff, but maybe people who haven't, because I only discovered that probably in the past like 2 years. So from when I started writing, actually. So yeah, but having that language has actually helped me a lot in writing longer, because I've never had to. Well, I have worked on longer texts, but nothing this long before. at least not in my actual work, like unless it was a proofread, but like actual developmental edits, probably only since freelancing I've been doing. So having that like knowledge and the lingo and yeah, all that vocabulary that I had to sort of go and find out for myself or that I found out thanks to you. That's been really helpful with planning, I think, for me.
Oh, I'm glad,
Yeah, you're a
that
pantser,
I've
aren't
helped a
you?
little. Sorry.
You're a pantser, aren't you? I think you are.
Oh, I'm a mixture. So currently my YA, I have every chapter is plotted.
Oh,
Um,
isn't it?
yeah, but
I didn't realize.
not so tight where I know exactly point. Doesn't always go there though. It sometimes has a bit of a
Yes.
change, but so I think I'm a mixture. Like I'm not an absolute. Everything has to stick this way. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think I've got like written down. I've got like 36 chapters, but I'm
Right.
like currently in my chapter now. I think I'm on 11. But in my book where I've plotted, I'm probably on chapter 9. So
Yes.
I'm a little. I've added more to it as I've gone
Yeah.
along.
I do
So
have to
yeah, I'm a
say,
mixture of both.
I love
You
it
should find
when
something.
you think your story is going in one direction and then your characters are like, "Nope."
Yeah.
'Cause
And I've
I
completely changed my ending as well from how I've plotted it. I'm like, no, my ending was too cliche. That's not going to happen. So I've changed it now. So I've not written it down. That's just staying in my head. I probably should write it down because it will probably go. But
That's so good. I love
um,
it when, I'm like I remember what and this was the exact first time it ever had happened to me before, and it had never happened to me before, and I was writing, and then I was starting to write this character that was gonna say something, and I was like, "She would never say that." And I was only about 2 chapters in, and I just innately knew that this character would never
so
say
good.
what I was planning, and I just remember being caught by surprise. I was like, "Where did that come from? This is magic."
It
What
is.
sorcery is this?
Oh, it's amazing when that happens though, because they've you
Really?
can shows it shows you how much that character has developed, whether you're in your writing or whether like how much they've developed in your head, that
Yeah.
they're now got their own like narrative going on, and you're like arguing with yourself, like, no, that's not. They wouldn't say that because you know them so well. And I think that that's what I really like about writing for older children. I didn't really do get that much involved. Well, I don't still get that much involved with my picture books because there's not as much character development
No,
like
yeah.
as what there is in a. I mean, there is still character development, but not as much as what there is when you're writing a novel. And I love that.
It's such a good feeling.
Yeah,
I don't think I'd ever felt that rush before. Just that feeling of adrenaline, like, "Oh my gosh, I think I know something more."
and did that like just make you just want to carry on, like because it can. There's
Yeah.
times when I really want to write and I just can't bring myself to do it, even though I love it so much. But I'm just like, I can't do it. I just can't do it. I don't, whether it's because I don't feel like I'm good enough to write, or whether I just can't be bothered that day, or whether or not I just need to make a millionth cup of tea. Like, there's always a reason for me to go. I'm not going to sit down and do it. And I just forget, even though like I know what I'm supposed to be doing. But
Mhm.
then there's then times where you just are just so into it and you cannot just come away from writing,
Yes.
and I love it when that happens. But I have to put myself like really force myself to do that to get to sit down and actually start. But once I do, then that can happen. So it's
I
just
had
that
that
stuff.
exact same thing, like, for me, it's yeah, it's exactly the same thing, and I was reading actually, oh, there's a noise, okay. I was actually reading, this book, which I would recommend to any creative who, like, kind of struggles to find time to write during the day. It's called Growing Gills. I can't remember the author's name, but it's a really great book, and in
I've got
the
to look up
initial
to it after.
chapters in the initial chapters, it says writing is an act of ego, or rather, like spending time on art is an act of ego. You really have to enter like some part of your consciousness and decide that you are worthy of writing and that you are good enough. And yeah,
Wow.
I'm gonna be a bit. I'm gonna let this ego shine for this moment in time where I'm writing. And I remember when I read that, it instantly made me feel a bit better. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna indulge in that a little bit more. I'm allowed
That's
to.
so good. That's like so I when I get these feelings of like self-doubt and imposter syndrome, which can happen, other
Mm.
than sort of getting just get my friend. So like I've got one of my critique partners who is a friend as well. His name's Stephen. So when you watch Stephen, hello, he rang
I
me
see
when I
it.
had a really bad day the other day, and he just rang me and was just like, "Don't do this. Like you're amazing," and it was just so lovely. And you know, it just really made me feel better. So you have them, those your friends who understand how that feels is so important. That's why I just like go back to how amazing our community is, and we can just write, "I'm having
Oh,
imposter syndrome today" as a tweet, and everyone's just like, "I'm here with you." And when you know someone else has it, you go, "Oh, it's not as bad. It's not as bad as what I thought." So,
it's so reassuring
um,
to see other people have it. Like I wish
yeah,
they didn't, but sometimes when I just talk to you, or other freelance friends of mine, yeah, it's so reassuring to know that I'm not alone in this boat, that it feels very lonely. And writing is a very lonely act as well, isn't it? So
yeah, yeah. It is. It's brilliant, but yeah, it's definitely it's lonely when you're. Yeah, it definitely is. Another book I found helps me is Big Magic
Mm,
by Elizabeth Gilbert. So I will
yes.
dip in and out of that when I need to. And I've got it. I read it, and sometimes I listen to it as well. Sometimes I need her voice just telling me that this story needs to be written. Because if I don't write it, someone else is going to write it. Big magic will happen. It will take it to someone else, and
Ooh.
so I need. So then I'm like, I'm writing it. I'm writing it. This story is my story. It has to come out of me. It's like desperate. It's clawing to get out. So I'm like, yeah, I listen to Elizabeth Gilbert sometimes, and she really helps.
I've never read
Um,
that book, so
so good.
I'm probably gonna listen to it too. I feel like that's a really good walking book.
It is. It is. Yeah. When I'm just if I sometimes if I rarely go for a run, I'll put that on because I
Yeah,
can
I'm
kind
gonna
of
do
lose
that.
myself in it as
Mm.
I'm just trying to run, walk. Like
So what is her theory about writing? Like what is the book about more specifically?
it's just about like how I'm probably just going to get it completely wrong now because I wasn't
Sorry.
prepared. Um, but yeah, it's just because it's all about you're just being creative and like the magic that comes with being creative. So she talks about like she had this massive idea for this book and she just kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off.
Mm.
And then she met so then she read this so she read the book and she didn't do it, and then she read a book which was exactly the same story but she hadn't put it out there, so it wasn't like stolen. And
No.
she met and it but it was from one of her favorite authors, like so it's one of her favorite authors who then wrote the book that she was doing like in her head. And they met and they're
No.
now like really good friends, so she just calls it like big magic. So it's all about just that creativity and just honing it and finding it and believing in it yourself.
Mm.
So, and I mean, and it's not just writing; it's just about anything because we are creative, and I think so many people are. Whether they and it doesn't mean that you're like artistic. It doesn't mean you're writing. It's just
Yeah.
there's just something in us that means we just want to make something, whether it's music, whether it's like what we do. It's just amazing, and definitely magical, like you said earlier.
It is.
Books are
Magic.
magic.
I can't believe
Um,
I said that and didn't know about this.
I'll
Funny.
definitely just get it on Audible or whatever you and however you
I
listen to it.
will,
Um,
yes.
so we'll move on to the next one because we've been chatting for like 40 minutes, and
Sorry, I keep on
this is supposed
sidetracking.
to be 15, 30 minutes long. I obviously haven't planned my questions very well. Um, so So you're represented by Molly Jameson at United Agents Twins. Can you tell us a little bit about your querying journey?
Oh, ooh, this is an interesting one. I feel like a lot of people are gonna hate me with this one. Um, but I got Molly on my very first round of querying. But to be completely fair, like I think so this is how things went, right? Um, So I asked her on Twitter if I could just query her. I had no idea if she was open to queries. I just did not follow any form of guidelines. But to be fair, it is because I had worked with her previously when I was an editor. So there was that level of trust to begin with. And like I knew her personally and she knew me and like we got along really well. So I just felt that there was that click. So I just asked her if I could send her my manuscripts. And then she said yes, and she was obviously open to querying, and she is as well now, I think. So if anyone wants to send her pitches, do so. She is great. We love Molly. We're a Molly stan community here.
Yeah, and from picture books all the way up to adult.
Like, how good is that? She's the
Yeah.
best. She's a superwoman. But yeah, and so I just sent them to her, and then I waited and waited and waited. And I think after about 2 months, she got back to me and she wanted a call. And at that point, I was not feeling as confident. I submitted with 3 picture book texts, which you had very kindly looked at as well before I sent them to her. And I remember at that point, I didn't feel like I kind of felt as if the market had already moved on from what I had originally planned. So I basically pitched her other ideas that I had in mind. I took advantage of that call because for some reason, I convinced myself, hello, imposter syndrome, that she would want to see more. Or that maybe, I mean, I have no idea if that's true or not, but basically I was like, okay, I got this call. I'm going to give it everything I got. So I went in the call super enthusiastic and I kind of told her about all the other ideas that I had planned for nonfiction pitches and for my middle grade. And then on that basis, she offered representation. So, I mean, I guess overall, it was an easier journey than most people. But
you had queried other agents as well, hadn't you? As well, and had rejections like us, like we all do, as well.
Yes,
so.
yes, there were some rejections. I mean, Molly was my first choice, so I was really happy with how things went.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had queried 2 other agents, and they came back with rejections. One of them rejected me because I obviously had submitted with picture books, and that was an area that she was a bit worried to work in because she was sensing that it was becoming a very difficult market to sell in, which everyone knows now. That's public information. Like it is it's a hard sell. And the other agent that I had queried had just signed an author that had a very similar kind of fun, humorous tone to the way I write. So she didn't want to like self-sabotage basically, which is completely fair. But they both came back saying you can always resubmit, and that's the thing. People can always resubmit.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people worry about that. It's like I think we all, and I know that I did as well. So you think you'd had a rejection from them, and that means like you are rejected. Like, you take it as a personal rejection, like, but that's not how it is. You can always resubmit again, and like sometimes and especially if you've got some feedback, and you feel like you can work on that story again, that you could possibly even resubmit the same story if there's been a huge redevelopment of that, and you think it's stronger. You don't have to just completely go, I'm never like going to query that agent again.
Yeah, exactly.
And was that the same in editing, like as well when you was an editor? Did you like sometimes you would say no to something but actually there was something in it, and then it would come back to you more developed and stronger, and then you would possibly acquire it or be interested at least.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing as well. Like sometimes you might really love a text, but you bring it to acquisitions and it doesn't go through. And you're just like, no, you need to give it a chance. You need to. But yeah, sales might just be like, no, we're not doing this time. But it's okay because the best thing about publishing is that there's no expiration date. You can just resubmit. There's always new ideas to be sent, and like it'll just work out however it's meant to work out. So I'm getting very philosophical here. But I really do truly believe that. And sometimes like it's just a matter of this isn't the right text, but you're an amazing writer. We want to see more from this person. And then, yeah, like there have been occasions where I was like, okay, I really want this author. This text isn't right. Please continue to send me stuff by them. And then I would, take them on at the third round of submission that they sent me. Or the same thing might happen with an illustrator if there are illustrators in the house. I would really like this portfolio, but I knew it needed more development work. And like I can see there's a couple of illustrators that I really wanted to work with when I was at Scholastic, for example, but they just weren't at that level that Scholastic needed at that point. And now they've been commissioned to work on titles with Scholastic. So that goes to show. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, hope is never lost. Oh, and also another thing I always say is, so I only submitted to 3 agents that I really, really liked. And I always say just submit to 3 agents to begin with, because you might get feedback. You can use that feedback and then you can resubmit to other agents and it might work out for you at that round. So yeah.
Oh, that's great advice. I think because, I mean, that's not me. I'm like massively impatient. So like I didn't do like all of it in one go, but I found the ones that I wanted to the most and would send that out first. It was probably like 5 or 6, but I think 3, between 3 and 5 is probably a good number, because you can kind of get a little bit lost, and then during that time you could be writing something else that
Yeah.
might make your other text a bit stronger as well, like stand up against them in a different way, because sometimes you can write and they're all very similar, but it's good to show your range. So if you've written something that's different and you've already submitted like to the agent that you really want to, because you've done like a whole blanket submission, blanket query to everybody, then
Yeah.
you kind of like might have wasted that little bit of time. You can't, like, I mean, you, like we said earlier, you can re-query an agent, but you probably want to leave it a little bit of time in between, so you're not constantly just sending to them over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just personal opinion. Like I'll probably give it a couple of months before I like would re-query someone if I was like querying it.
Yeah, definitely. I think a couple of months is more than enough to.
Yeah. Plus they get so many, like, so it's like they got to like remember everybody that queries them. Like,
They don't.
who is it? Is it Kessia Lupo? She's now an agent in America, and she's only been like she's been open for 3 weeks and she's got 700 submissions.
Really?
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter earlier.
Wow.
I think that's sorry, I might have got the name wrong. I don't think I have. I think it's Kessia, but yeah, I was like, wow, she's got to read 700 submissions. She's closed her submissions on Query Manager for a while,
I
but
heard that.
I'm like, how they do it, it's just insane. I mean, obviously they can't read all the manuscripts. They'll read the cover letter, and if they don't feel like that each is right for them, they probably would always open the manuscript, I'd imagine. If they definitely know that's not going to work for them, it's not their,
Yeah,
I
I
think that
think for
people even
me,
query if they're like might query a YA to someone that doesn't even represent it. It's like people don't always do their research, and it's really important to do your research.
do your research.
Do
Yes.
your research.
I
So
definitely, when I was an editor,
that's a
I
good
think I knew, like, if something was gonna work, I kind of felt it within the first 10 minutes of reading.
Oh, that's so
If it
good.
was, yeah.
I think like when you've been writing for a longer time and you read a lot of other people's writing, when you do get something in, like, so if I'm like critiquing someone's work, I get that feeling as well. If I think this is really strong, or I can read it and go, this isn't as strong. I think you just kind of, the more you read, the more you
Exactly.
learn. Like, and I think that's with everybody anyway.
Yeah, I think
Um,
the best way to know the market is by reading, really.
yeah. Yeah, so we'll move on, because like we're coming up to an hour. We've not done any viewers questions yet. So
Sorry.
I just have you got any? So we'll just do some quick. Hopefully, I'll only pick a couple out of the viewers, because I don't think we're going to be able to get through them all, because I have 7. So I won't ask 7 questions more, because that could take us to like 2 hours, and I don't think probably you've got that time, and nor has all the people viewing it either. So what are your top writing tips for aspiring, I've said children's authors, but it could just be authors, and as you've worked with a lot of illustrators as well, so authors and illustrators in general?
Yeah, I would say go into bookstores, look at what's in the shops, read a lot. Number 2, And also, I would probably say give yourself time to think, because sometimes, the act of thinking, like even just, washing the dishes while you're thinking about your book, like that's when you can get some of your best ideas for your so don't feel like you always have to just be like sitting in front of the page to write. Sorry, this is like really crap advice probably, but
No, no,
like
you know what? I
writing
don't
is
think
so
it is, because I think a lot of us feel like in order to write, we have to be either with a like pen in hand, or we have to be at our laptop or Mac
yeah,
or wherever, whatever you use. Um, and that's not it. Like writing isn't just actually getting words out; it's thinking about it. That's
exactly.
all part and parcel of your process of writing a book, I think.
Yeah. We're going through these quickly. Hold on, I'm just gonna change room. Um, Here we are, because I might have better lighting here. Sorry, I like spent a whole hour of this with terrible lighting. This is probably better.
So I'll ask two viewers questions, so we can round off. So there'll be I'm just going to ask a couple that I think personally might help, because originally I set this up for I thought it was just going to be for querying authors, and but actually so many people are interested, and I think having
Yeah.
the range of people that are just that are writing and querying to people that are published, are like working in publishing, I think just get a whole range of like ideas and thoughts off everybody will really help everyone, because writing isn't just about querying. Writing is like,
Yeah.
we're both in a very similar position in our careers at the moment,
Yeah.
both out on submission with our agent, both like constantly hoping for news. um so there's like we're really similar. So just there's you've got the querying, you've got the submission, and then when you're published there's other things that happen
Yeah.
after that, and there's still like obstacles that are just constantly there. You don't get published and then everything's like, amazing and easy, and it's just not like that. So I want this to be like for everybody. So I just think a couple of questions that might help so many different people. um and I think a lot of people wonder like what happens like behind the scenes. So like you're interested in a story and you really want to get by the story. What is it like in acquisitions? Is it true that sales have like the final say on if something is going to be acquired? You could really love it, but sales go, look, this isn't going to sell. But
Yeah.
can you fight that against that and really get that through, or is it
Yeah.
generally always down to sales?
You really can. You can fight that. I think you need to get all of your ducks in a row. So basically, like usually an editor will have access to sales data of, whatever that author has previously published or whatever kind of competition there is, similar titles to that book. So that really does help you go into that meeting kind of knowing, okay, this might be a yes. Usually before an acquisitions meeting, which is the like really, really scary one, you might have a team creative meeting, and that might give you like points to discuss. So there were very oftentimes I would be developing a text way before I brought it to a meeting, and I was just like bringing it to the level it needed to be to get through that meeting.
Yeah.
So it might be that you're actually communicating with an editor for quite a while before it even gets to a meeting, just because it needs a bit more developmental work. So, I mean, that's really good news for the author, because you start developing a relationship with the editor, and that means that if that particular text doesn't go through, they'll remember you, they'll know who you are, and they'll want to hopefully work with you at some point. So yeah, and then at that point you will be once you've developed the text and everything, you might be getting opinions before even before that acquisitions meeting. So you do have lots of chances before that meeting where you can get feedback and try to improve your pitch as an editor. Like maybe it's something's wrong with your pitch and how you are presenting this book. So yeah, and so you do have lots of chances before then, and obviously when you present it, you are very passionate about it and you're showing enthusiasm. And sometimes it's a case of like, I really, really want to publish this book, just give me a chance, and they will. Like sales will give you a chance. You might not get a lot of budget for it, but
Oh, okay. So that's quite interesting, isn't it? So it's not always like it's not the same for everybody. Like the budget and the advance and everything like that. It's different for
yeah.
for everybody on how they feel that book will sell.
Yes, exactly. So it is a matter of, and then you obviously cost it as well. So before going to that meeting, even you're asking sales, okay, how many copies do you think we can sell of this book? And they will give you an estimate of like how many copies they'll be able to sell in co-editions, which is when the book gets translated into other languages. So they might be like, okay, I think we can sell 5,000 copies. This is a random number, obviously. We can sell 5,000 copies in languages. And then, yeah, you can get 6,000 copies for the UK, for example. And so you put together this like Excel sheet, or you input it all in a database that then generates that for you, and it basically tells you how much money that book can make. It's really interesting to see how that all works, and like how, I don't know, even just changing the finishes of the cover of a book. So rather than have it like glossy, have it matte, how those price, like how much money you can earn if you lower production level or if you increase the copies that you're hoping to sell. So basically, like before you even go to that meeting, you're making costs work. You're really developing a really, really good pitch, and getting the team on board with that idea too. So there's lots of groundwork that you do to make sure that that idea wins. And obviously, like if the editor feels really passionate about it, they'll give it their all. But that's
It's
how
so interesting, isn't it? Because I think like a lot of writers just think if an editor loves it, that's it. Like there's so much more that happens behind the scenes. Just like how long, if you sort of acquire, like when you maybe, I suppose it's different again on the author and what illustrator you want for it, but like is there like an average amount of time that you would say that whole process takes before like that book is sold and then like in and then developed and published?
So since it's sold, since it's
Well, I mean, maybe even like both. So if someone, so
Mhm.
you've got your agent and your agent subs to the
Right.
publishers. Um, like, is there like a certain time between? I suppose all publishers are different. It's like 3 months, because I know that I have spoke with one of my friends who's published. She said like it took her 3 months for the contract, and I was like, wow, that's really quick.
That is really quick.
That's
Oh my
really
gosh.
quick, but she thought it was really long, and I
Really?
was like, God, that'd be amazing. But yeah, so I think like I don't even know if submissions are read within 3 months. So I didn't know if there was like
Yeah.
an average
Yeah,
time that it
no.
would take for that
I mean, for
you would
us,
acquire something and sign a contract.
I think I once managed to get like within something under, not under contract, but under offer within a week. But that is just like
Wow,
this. I mean, but that has to
you
be
must have been like,
next to
that
day
is how we're
rare.
having that. Like no one else is having that, but we're having it. We need it.
And also, I think that like that happens a bit more in adult publishing than in children's. but but no, I mean, I don't think there's any average. I guess like 6 months at least would probably be what you're looking at. But sometimes things move a bit quicker. Sometimes, I mean, really, there's no magic formula. I wish there was. Like that would be so reassuring. While on sub,
Yeah.
we're just supposed to be like, when will we get answers?
I mean, it's nice
But
just
yeah,
to get answers, which is lovely when you're on submission. It's so different than when you're querying. You feel like when you're querying, like agents often don't respond to you, and that's hard. But you kind of also accept that's going to happen because it's known. But when you're on submission, you get feedback, and it's just completely, it's completely different. I mean, not everyone does feedback. You still get like, I don't like the word, but people say ghosted, and that still happens. You don't always hear back from every publisher. But when you do, it's generally with some feedback and some helpful feedback as well for you to
yeah,
improve your texts. And I think that's just really encouraging.
it really is. Yeah, and then I guess once you've been commissioned, it can take anything from up to a year to like 2 to 3 years, even if it's illustrated.
Yeah.
It's a long road. But I really want it.
Yeah. Me too. We're constantly just like picking each other up and like manifesting for each other. So and as I am, so I've got so many like people that are in very similar positions, or that are querying, that are just like amazing writers that just haven't found just haven't found their champion yet, and it's so hard, because I just want to say, everybody needs to read this book because it's so good. But I think
they will though. They
yeah.
will. It's just a matter of finding the right champion. I think you're right.
If you keep trying as well, because I think it can really knock you down when you're out there and you're not getting accepted, whether from an agent or whether it's from a publisher. I think it's really difficult to keep going, but it's really important to keep going and just doing what you love. If you love it, that will show. So I think that's really important. I think we probably should come to an end. I mean, I do have so many more questions, but it's been an hour.
I'm sorry.
No, don't apologise. I think I've just had, so I probably shouldn't have asked so many questions myself. So yeah, I think we'll finish up. It's been so great to chat to you. If you just wait for a second, I'll just say goodbye and introduce next week's guest. So I hope everyone's enjoyed chatting with Chris. I have, as I always do, and she's gave us some brilliant information about behind the scenes and what it's like, and as a writer as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Next week I have a friend come on with me. So that's Jess Bleakley. She has published a picture book called Ching Shi, and she is also a young adult author. And so she'll be chatting with me at 8 o'clock next Thursday. So tune in. And thank you all, and I'll see you later.